Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys had a nice extended holiday weekend. I'm excited to be with you. I want to thank Rebecca Thompson for putting the View from the Top series together, as well as everybody in the background that makes these things happen. Excuse me. We're excited this morning for the opportunity to make a difference in your world. And for our brief hour, in order to make this happen, we have three different roles here, and I'm going to propose a fair trade. The first role is my role as the moderator. My job is going to be to extract the secrets and techniques that make our panelists successful in a way that you can walk away with either deeper reflection or, the best scenario would be you have an actionable item that you can walk away from and start to change your business. Your job, the audience, is just eliminate distractions and listen very carefully, because those nuggets might appear in different shapes and sizes, and you need to pull them out of the conversations because they're going to be there, and there's no doubt about that. And you might have to eliminate some distractions, put your cell phone down and your laptop, and be all in. You know what the story of the bacon and the eggs is, right? The chicken's involved, the hog's committed. So hopefully you guys are committed because you already decided to spend the hour. So let's see what we can get out of it. The panelists, their role is going to be to share and express aspects of their business in a way that you can take action. Sound good? All right, so let's dig in. Our panel today is about growth and leverage. This is where the rubber hits the road in your business. This is where the magic happens. If you want to scale your business, and scaling your business could be adding a couple transactions or 100 transactions. But if your goal is to do more, and perhaps in less time, that's what leverage is. So we're going to unpack what that looks like. In fact, I've always been amazed that real estate has always been an 80-20 business. 20% of the people are making 80% of the money. And I wonder, as a coach and motivator and teacher and real estate leader and all the things that I've done through the years, what motivates me is to really find out what the difference is in people, right? What's the difference in people? I'm seeing a quote there. Everybody can see me. Give me a thumbs up if you can. Yeah, okay. So what the difference in people is, we all have the same opportunity. I don't believe anybody is born special. It's what we do that makes us special. So what's the difference in people? These panelists represent the 20%, and they've incorporated strategies either by design or default that makes their time more valuable. And I think you'd all agree that we only have so much time, money, and energy, right? So if you want to grow your business and you want to leverage your time, you have to understand what your time is worth, what the value of it is, and you need to protect that. So let me introduce our panel. And first off, we have John Digiovanni. I'm sorry, Digiovanni. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You got it, Digiovanni.
All right. Digiovanni.
Say it with a little Italian flavor.
Digiovanni. John, you've been in real estate for 21 years and you do about 40 transactions. Is that?
That's correct, yes.
All right, welcome, John. Next, we have Kristine Glockler. And by the way, John's from Dallas. Kristine, you're from Chicago, correct?
Chicago and Southern Wisconsin, yeah.
In Southern Wisconsin, we're going to hear the accent, right? Kristine has been since 2011 and does about 25 transactions.
My personal each year, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really good transaction point, because when you start to do 20 plus, you only have so much time, money, and energy, and that's where you start to really need the leverage. So it's going to be a really good perspective from Kristine. Next, we have Chris Hauck, and he is from Minnesota. Hi, Chris.
Howdy.
Chris has been in the business. Now, everybody put your seatbelts on here because I'm blown away just looking at you. Almost 47 years, is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Oh my God, almost half a century. And you've done, now I want to make sure I get this right. You've done over 7,000 transactions in your
Somewhere in that range. Correct. Yes.
incredible. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have Crystal McGrath, and she's from St. Louis. She's been in real estate for 16 years, and she does about 100 deals a year. Is that about right?
Well, I do half of that. My husband and I work as a team.
The team, okay.
Yep.
So about half of that, okay. And,
Yep.
and you said something interesting, Crystal. You got into the business in 2007, correct?
That's right. Yes.
All right. So if you were going to survive, that was the time to push through it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Learned some good principles and really established that at that time. It was rough, but made it through.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Let me start with Kristine. You and I spoke for a little bit prior to the panel this morning, and you impressed me as somebody that seems very well organized. Is that a true statement? What systems do you use with buyers and sellers to set expectations and ultimately protect your time?
Yeah, so systems and processes are really important to me. And so is time, right? Like you said, we all have the same amount of time. Even starting out in working with clients, I have templates, information that I customize for them, add kind of a personal touch. So whether that's the buyer guide, the seller information, I customize for each person, but I have boilerplates, so to speak. I even have email templates that it sounds like something that might not save a whole lot of time, but it really does, whether that's to the other agent on the transaction, buyers, sellers, etc. And then I take copious notes with all the transactions, which I think, is just good practice in real estate in general. But I keep all that. I have a variety of different pieces of software that I use, a CRM, Coldwell Banker's tools that really help me save time, be more productive, and ultimately leverage.
I love that. For those of us that have been in the business for a while, you start to see the same situations, right? So the more you could set expectations, that's leverage. What would be an example of something you would send to buyers to kind of manage the experience?
Yeah, so usually the first call, I set expectations. And because we're a team of now 3, I'm very upfront that each of us are working for that client. We each have different transactions under our name, so to speak, but we're a team that works together in the client's best interest to utilize what we're really good at and our strengths. So very early on, I'll have a conversation with buyers about that. I will then, and I always tell them, I don't want to bombard them with information up front, but I have information that I tell them, especially for first-time home buyers or buyers that haven't really purchased, and I have one now hasn't purchased in 45, 50 years. And so giving information about what to expect. I have a roadmap, so to speak, of the steps in the home buying process for clients taking out a mortgage, what to do and not to do when taking out a mortgage. And then I actually have a video where I go over everything. Clients love that because if they're visual, it's not just over the phone. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, do a pre-approval, get a pre-approval letter, get your proof of funds letter. It makes it more digestible for them. So that's something that's worked really well for me. And I may not send everything to them all at once, but I give them the information in advance of looking at a property.
Awesome. So let me just make sure I understand this. So you take all these different interactions that happen. First, you bring everybody together. You kind of explain what the goal is. The buyers want to buy, the sellers want to sell. Our job is to facilitate that. And then you have a series of emails and processes that you give the clients a heads up of what to expect. Is that?
Exactly. Mhm.
That's
So they
awesome.
know, because they don't know what they don't know. And you don't want them to assume, especially in our market here, it's different than it was years ago. So you want to take something that's complex and make it easier for them. And a lot of times they like that.
So let me open it up to the other panelists. As Kristine's talking, is there anything that you want to add that you do in your own personal business with your clients to set expectations?
Well, I think that, I kind of look at our job is kind of multifaceted. The beginning with a client, we're teachers. Never take for granted what they, as Kristine said, what they know or what they don't know. So first we're teachers, and that is explaining to them everything that's going to happen, setting the expectation, going over the contract. I really try to meet with them. If it's a buyer, certainly try to meet with them before we start the process. And I always tell them, this is a complicated process, but it's my job to make it simple for you. So don't try to think ahead. Just let me guide you through every single step. And as I guide them through every single step, hopefully that gives them some relief that they don't have to remember all the things I said the first time we met, and that they really understand what's going to happen. But that works really well for me.
Do you think? Go
I
ahead.
do the same, where I sit down with buyers, especially kind of before jumping into the market, to really set the expectation on what they should do, what they should expect. And it definitely sets things up for success for them, for me. It eliminates surprises, which is really important. And this is a hard market to navigate them through. So they really do need those expectations before they jump in and enter it. It isn't just about going and showing them something right away. There's so much more to go over ahead of time.
How many of you have a rule that you meet a new client in the office versus at a property?
Try to.
Try to.
Yeah. And if not before, maybe you go show them one house to meet them face to face.
Right.
And then you really try to get that one-on-one appointment with them.
Yeah, because would you agree that if you meet them at a property, you kind of lose leverage, right? You're gonna have to go back and find out all the same things that you need to find out anyway.
Yeah.
So at the very least, you venture one property and then try and go back and recoil. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Andy, I would say that probably one of the most difficult decisions everybody makes is who to work with. And, it's interviewing the people to make sure that their expectations are realistic. Both spouses are motivated and somewhat focused in the same direction is really important. I mean, as an example, if somebody's moving to town, they have to buy a house in the next 7 days, they're an ideal customer. If somebody wants to buy a lake house someday in the future, they're not a prospect at all, because everybody wants to buy a lake house someday in the future. So, it's deciding who you work with.
I love that, Chris. I remember when I was in high school, my parents used to always tell me, spend time with the right people. And then I heard that same advice when I got into real estate. Some of the old timers told me, figure out who to spend your time with. There's lots of people that you can spend time with. And what you said, Chris, is as far as motivation, there's people that want to buy and there's people that have to buy. And I think it's really important that, when you sit down with somebody, that you go through, you have a checklist. Are they pre-approved with your lender? Are all decision makers there? Do they want to buy or do they have to buy? Are they willing to disclose information? You start to go through these things and you start to find what you really need. And to Kristine's point, the more that you have a checklist and a process, it becomes an interview process where maybe perhaps you're interviewing them, right? If your time's worth $300 an hour or 400 or 75, it's still really valuable. And every bet that you make that there's no return on your investment or result for the client is really not a good bet. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I'd agree with it completely. It is an interview process, and you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you. And if it's not a good fit, move on to the next customer.
I love that.
a huge amount of time with the wrong people.
That's right. Let's move on to just leverage in general. So again, for the purposes of growth, we're defining growth as leverage, meaning you make your time more valuable. What are some ways that you see leverage in your business, Crystal?
I think the biggest thing, the business has shifted. You know, we work from our homes, from on the go, from the office. So I think making systems, I'm really big on that as well. And using tools that make things easier to do. I do have a lot of email templates that I have set up to make things easier on emailing clients out. I categorize my clients into email categories on my email, and that makes it easier to reference things on the go. I can do it from my phone, from home, and keeping those systems together to communicate with them and make communication easier. I have everybody in my phone, agents in there, and whenever I'm doing a deal with them, I actually save their name and the address right after that, so that if I can't remember their name, I can easily find them by the address I'm referencing and knowing what deal that is, to make things easier. And I think that's the biggest thing. You know, I've got young kids, so I'm juggling family and work, and I'm not always sitting at my computer, but obviously we're using that technology.
So technology is leverage for you. So you're always trying to figure out the workarounds, whether group texting or
Yeah.
categorizing people, so you can hit buttons and reach more results. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. Email's really big. The CRM system is really big on communicating and staying in front of past clients. I really utilize also the tasks within email to keep to-do lists and things like that. You can actually flag an email as a reminder to follow up on it, which is helpful when you're trying to remember things to do, to really help people and not forget things while you're out and about.
Is there any way to, so someone's listening to this and they're like, that sounds pretty good. I would love to be more organized and flag messages, and just, is there a starting point to that, or is it just kind of working your way through it?
I think the biggest thing that was a game changer, kind of basics, is in my email creating a buyer folder. So, and then within that buyer folder, I categorize each buyer's name. I do the same for sellers and categorize them. Once they're closed, I move them out of that into a closed seller or closed buyer folder. And all the emails get categorized into there, so that it does make it easier when I'm working on that task. I copy myself on what I send them, so it goes in there, so I know whether I've done a task or not, and I've addressed that email template. Setting those expectations with reminders and that stuff through those systems.
Awesome. I love that. I mean, we all have so many moving pieces and things to keep track of. So when you have a folder, it becomes your anchor to that transaction.
Absolutely.
And then it becomes your conduit. So everything kind of flows to one spot. So you're not scrambling around. I think we can all agree. Sometimes we can all agree how frustrating it is to find something, and when you're doing 100 emails a day. So that's great. Let's move on to, I was talking with Chris prior, and what I love about Chris is that he is a team, and there's a couple things that stood out to me. Number one, your 20% is you voice to voice on the phone prospecting with people. Is that what I heard you say when we spoke?
Well, about 80% of our business comes from outgoing phone calls.
Oh, from outgoing.
Yes.
And you're really leveraged. Like, there's very little that you do in your business other than the dollar productive voice to voice in the prospecting. Is that a fair statement?
Probably one of the biggest shifts we had, Andy, is understanding the difference between money generating and admin, or sales and admin. And my goal is to spend 80% of my time, in money generating activities or sales activities. I've got really good staff and their job is to take care of about 80% of the admin. I still have to step in periodically, but there are a lot of routine activities that really don't require my personal touch. But with really good staff, we can take care of all of the issues, the questions, the customer touches we need to make without me doing all of it. Otherwise, we were stuck at about 25 deals a year, like you mentioned earlier. And once we started adding really good admin, now we're on track to do 90 this year. And if I did everything myself, I'd be back at 25.
Yeah. So, boy, there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. I guess, again, thinking in terms of the audience. So if you have people that are out there that they like the concept of doing 90 deals and they like the concept of staying in one lane, what does that look like? What's the transition point to that? Is it a gradual process, or does it just say, hey, look, I'm going to hire an admin. I'm going to put together, my systems and models, and that's what we're going to roll with. What does that look like?
It can be a couple different things. You can hire a full-time admin, which I did at one time. And when I'm sitting there doing nothing and I'm paying her and she's doing nothing, kind of motivates you to work and be effective. But, a lot of people start part-time. They share an admin with somebody else, build it up as your income builds up, as your sales volume builds up, you add more people. So it depends, some people jump off the end of the dock and others put a toe in and gradually you build up the team. But really understanding, it's so easy to be really, really, really busy, but highly unproductive. So the question is, how do you become productive and not just busy?
How do you, so your admin, are they licensed or non-licensed?
They're licensed.
They're licensed, but do they do active sales, or are they more on the admin side and they're licensed to facilitate something that a licensed activity might require?
There are a number of things that are, as you go through the closing process that require a license.
Okay.
So they can take care of a lot of those things that I don't have to touch.
But they're not out selling.
And they're not selling, no.
That's one of the biggest things that I see is when people start to scale their business is they start with buyers agents and trying to hire other agents. Did you start with admin right away? Was that your first hire?
No, I was 10 years in the business.
Yeah.
We added admin, and it was 10 years in the business before I really understood the difference between sales and admin and really understanding where I spent my time.
Well, folks, I'm going to just slow down on that because we talked about the nuggets that we want to pull out of here. Whether it's 10 years or 2 years or how many years, the reality is that understanding the difference between sales leverage and administrative leverage are two vast different concepts. One of the biggest objections and concerns that I hear other agents have when they want to scale is nobody can do the things as well as I do. And the other thing is I don't want to spend, the money, for my staff. Like what happens if that, and I have answers to that. And I don't know, Chris, I see you kind of smiling, but is there anything you want to add to that in terms of making someone feel a little more comfortable?
I've got a funny quick story. We got a purchase agreement in on one of our listings, and I had a gal that had been a sales agent for many years, and I came back in and she said, Chris, we got the Johnson house sold while you were out this morning. I said, really, what do I need to do? And she goes, oh, nothing. She goes, they came in, they signed the contract, we got everything negotiated, it's all done. And at first I was kind of mad. I thought, that's my value. That's what I do. That's what I do best. But then after I talked to my business coach about it, he goes, well, was it easier? And I said, yeah, it was a lot easier. He said, can you do it again? And I said, of course we can. It's interesting because working with that particular person, they would do a lot of our purchase agreement presentation. And they were the first contact. But if I had to get involved, I came in as the consultant rather than the sales rep. And it had more leverage with the consumer because you were working in a different role, and it works very well. So, I mean, part of it is letting go of things that you think are your own personal value. The customer wants to get the house sold.
Yeah, you know, one of the most profound things that I heard is that in relation to what we're talking about is that people are loyal to your standards, not to you. It's why people can go to McDonald's and their expectation is that the hamburger and the experience will be somewhat similar. You know, when you start to let other people control, there are people that like hammer nails. As we can all hammer nails, there are people that can do it better. And what I found in building teams in the past is that the customer actually appreciates talking to somebody else a lot of times about different things. We think that we can be all things to all people, and we can't. So I love that. And we spent a little time on that, and we could spend a whole panel just on what that looks like. And perhaps that's something that we'll explore and we'll webinar and we'll unpack, and we can answer questions about that. But that's a really key point. So Chris, thank you. Let me move on to the tools. And I want to start with John here and bring Kristine back into the conversation. I know, John, you and I spoke, and leverage for you is you're pretty big about the tools, and we're not here to sell CB tools. I mean, I want to hear what works for you. So tell me a little bit about what the tools mean and how they make your business easier.
Sure. And I'm going to address this question a little bit more towards maybe some of the folks out there that haven't been in the business very long, which very well may be a majority of the people on this call. I don't think of myself as very creative, and I don't think of myself as having a great memory. So I use the tools, and it doesn't matter which tools they are, if they're Coldwell Banker tools or there's others. Of course, I use all the Coldwell Banker tools. I don't spend a penny on anything outside of Moxie and Prospect Square and things of that nature. And the reason I do that is because I want to be able to spend a lot of time with my clients. I think this, is a very relationship business. And I think for the folks out there that are, relatively been in the business just a short time and maybe don't have the resource, for those assistants, or maybe you don't have a team yet, where you can kind of spread out those duties. The tools that we have help me, actually help me sleep at night. I'm a big user of my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't get done. I think in building, and we talk about leverage, I think in building a business, this business is really about meeting more people. And as simple as that sounds, meeting more people, putting them into the tools that we have, because not everyone that we meet is going to make a decision on buying a home or selling a home today. As a matter of fact, most aren't. But I know a lot of the folks newer in the business, that's what they look for. That who's going to buy today? Who can I close next month? But this is really a long-term environment. So if you just concentrate on meeting more people, however you do that, all the different ways that we do, putting them into Prospect Square, putting them into Moxie, using Moxie Engage, using Prospect Square with market reports, using the neighborhood reports. Those things help you build that relationship for people. I have people that call me regularly that I haven't talked to maybe in a year. Sometimes you could say shame on me, but if you've got a couple thousand people in that database that you're cultivating, I can rely back to my tools and see what I've done for them and what they're doing. So I think that's such a critical part of the business. And sometimes we get so busy that we forget about the tools. But I always go back to, well, if you're not using those tools, if you're not using your databases right, if you're not communicating with your client, I believe you have to communicate with the client at least 36 times a year. whether that be by email, 3 or 4, phone conversation, but the tools, the reports. To make yourself relevant in this business, people want information. My favorite tool is market reports in Prospect Square. I have hundreds and hundreds of people set up on that, where that every 21 days, they're basically getting a report on what's happening in their neighborhood. I set it up once and forget it. Don't really forget it, but you know what I mean. And I think it's so valuable that that those kinds of tools that are used. Again, like I'm not really creative, so I love using tools like we have with Listing Concierge and things of Moxie, for example, in the presentations. Sure, I customize a little bit of them and I have my own templates, but they're all there and ready for me to use. So that's what I find is one of the strongest points that I can do to leverage my time, because I like to do things on my own time too. And I like to do family things and sporting things, and that really helps me have a balance of life. And with 2 little grandkids, I'm running all over the place, going to soccer games and basketball games, and I love to do those things as well. These tools let me do that.
Love that. Thank you, John. Kristine, do you want to speak to some of that?
Sure. So I like to combine personal and customized with automated with a personal touch. So I think a lot of us can tell when an email is automated, it's just sent out, or I've heard stories of other agents where an email gets sent out and it wasn't supposed to go out. It didn't have the right stage in the process as far as what they were sending out. So yes, I utilize a lot of Coldwell Banker's tools to help do that. So I really like neighborhood news. What we do as a group is we do QR codes, which, right, the last few years, QR codes have never been more popular. QR codes for our website, QR codes for neighborhood news. So we do that at open houses. We have a sheet and a frame where people can scan and type in where they live, get their neighborhood news if they'd like. Then they're in our database, so to speak, and they're informed. It's a win-win. They're informed about what's happening in their neighborhood as far as real estate. We also are big fans of Listing Concierge. We do that a lot. And going back to like the Market Quest, those reports are great. So it's almost like a step every month, the beginning of the month. I could look at the MLS reports, of course, too, but I like the way the Market Quest is laid out as far as different towns or counties and what's happening in that market. Going back to what I said earlier, that provides a good visual versus just doing a video talking about prices are up this percent. The month supply of inventory is this. People can see that, refer back to that. And I also tie that in this market being a little bit more complex for buyers in our region, using those to show, okay, look at what this list of purchase price is. It's 100%. What does that mean? And explaining that to them.
That's great. What QR code? So that's capture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you capture. That's one of the ways that you capture. And then when they click the QR code, where does that go? Does that go into your database? Yeah,
so it ultimately does end up going in our database. The QR codes we use for different things. So my fiance recently joined the team a few weeks ago. And so like his business card has a QR code on it going to his Linktree page that has the websites and all of the different things on it. So you can customize the QR code to wherever you ultimately want it to go, which I do suggest, especially for agents that might have longer websites. If it's the .moxie, make it as easy as possible for the consumer. So I think that's something that's really helpful, and it's just fast. Yeah, they scan it. And it ultimately, to answer your question, it does go into our database and then follow up from there.
One of the comments that just came through from one of my leaders, Cecilia, said, at my desk, there is a QR code generator. Is that something? So it can't be any easier than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
wow, there's so much to unpack there, because again, you have the your contemporaries that are doing, who've scaled their businesses, that are maybe pulling a couple things out that, hey, I'll try that. Maybe it changes their perspective. Then you have a bunch of people that are just starting to get traction or want to get traction in the business. So there's all these things, but I think the overall awareness of what I hear you saying is that, real estate contact sport, and, you're adding people into systems. So the leverage is the systems are doing the touches. And I know some people might say, well, this doesn't work as well as that, or that doesn't work. I would, if I were to give you any advice, and you guys can see if you agree with this, is don't overthink it. If you don't know somebody, the ratios is 50-1 to convert somebody that you don't know. So if you haven't met them, so you need to drip on lots and lots of people. I know that today, when you're looking at things on the internet, they're always asking you for email addresses for an extra 10% off. Have you seen that? Right? So give me your email and I'll give you 10% off here. That's capture. So people are aggregating data and they're making that data work. And I believe it's important. And again, what I hear you saying is that we need massive amounts of people, and we need to employ this technology to grip on a lot of people. You need to be adding people and feeding this engine, because you just don't know where it's going to come from. And for John, it's meant, because he can work. John, you don't have a team, but your team really is the technology, right? That's your team. And you have a small team, right?
I have a small team, but yes, the technology is our team. And I will say for us, we're not doing 100 transactions a year, but the technology is also our administration. There's a lot of things that the technology and those tools can do that take care of the administrative side of the business.
That's great. Yeah. So I'm going to get to some questions, and I'm conscious that we're coming down the last 15 minutes. Let me just make sure that we've kind of encapsulated some of the stuff here. So let me ask you this. This might be a good segue into some questions. Actually, there's two things I want to ask you. How do you stay focused? Real estate, you wake up every day and you wake up. I used to say I wake up every day unemployed, unless I'm in front of somebody that could, buy something or sell something. But how are you tempted not to be all things to all people? Start with Chris.
I think one of the most important things is to have a schedule. And your schedule is really the most important thing. And it's a schedule for each day to make sure you hit the right activities. And we'll make out a calendar for the year. And the first thing I put on the calendar is days off and family time. Second would be education, and third would be the days left to work. And then going through daily schedule to figure out how do you make each one of those days productive.
That's awesome. So you follow a schedule. If it's not on your schedule, it doesn't exist. True?
Try to stay on the schedule at least 75-80% of the time. It's hard to hit 100%.
Yeah.
Got the perfect day written out, which is the ideal schedule, but you can get close, but it's hard to hit it.
Yeah. What's amazing, it's every time you want to see an attorney, and their time's as valuable as a top agent, but they make you wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks to see them. And we drop almost everything, to see people sometimes. But I think it's really important what you said is following a schedule and time blocking. So when you do your prospecting, is that time blocked on a daily basis?
3 hours each morning.
Each morning. Okay. Is that 5 days a week?
Just Monday through Friday.
Okay. So this is a guy, folks, that has been doing this for half a century. He is a coach. He does very little of the stuff in the business. And his main role is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, prospecting, non-negotiable. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, so for all the newer agents out there, this is a guy 50 years into the business that is disciplined to do that. we talk about nuggets, you have to ask yourself, if you're not prospecting in a time blocked way on a consistent basis. Let me ask you this. I mean, Crystal, what do you?
Andy, mind if I add one thing real quick?
Yeah.
You know, it's not just prospecting, it's being aware of what's going on around you. I mean, we'll pick up 1 or 2 deals a year. I'll be filling up with gas. Somebody pulls up with an out-of-state plate. I'll go visit with them. We'll get 1 or 2 deals a year from a wrong number. But, you know, it's just, you know, it's being aware of what's going on, asking questions and being available when somebody has a need. So, excuse me for interrupting.
No, it's all prospecting. I mean, you're engaging with the public, whether it's the license plate or whatever the case is. And a lot of people think prospecting is always sitting at a desk. I mean, it could be talking to the salesperson at Best Buy who's helping you with the TV. That, yeah, you turn around and say, hey, you know, where do you guys live? And they say, well, we're renting, but we're going to be looking for a townhouse. You know, it's talking real estate on a regular basis. Is that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the clerk at the convenience store. You know, who do you know that needs to buy and sell? Oh, my aunt just passed away. I think we need some help.
And here's a secret.
Everybody.
Yeah, and Chris, here's a secret that I think we can share with everybody and see if you agree. Everybody knows somebody who's thinking about buying or selling real estate.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yes, that's true.
Crystal, how do you stay focused?
I think the biggest thing is showing up. I go into the office most of the time, 5 days a week at least. I will tell you, the agents within my office that you see on a regular basis in the office are doing the most amount of business. I think we like to think that we are productive on the go or at home, but I think you're more hyper-focused when you go in on a schedule, you get into the office, you sit down, you've got all your systems definitely in front of you, and it makes a huge difference. There's some days that I think, you know, I don't have a lot to do today. And then I get into the office and then 3 hours later, being busy back to back doing things. It makes a difference. I think you have to get up, dress up, and show up.
Oh, wow. I mean, you're talking, that's big time advice. I have to agree. I mean, it's especially coming out of the pandemic, you know, where a lot of people set themselves, and there's nothing wrong if you can be productive. It's just, you have to know yourself. I know
Yes.
that when I work at home and the dog's doing figure eights between my legs and Amazon's ringing the doorbell every 2 minutes, it doesn't work for me, but
Yep.
right. So you have to know yourself. If you can put a wall, ceiling, and floor around a home office and you don't have the distractions, sure, you could be productive. But a lot of us, you know, and things happen when you go into the office, right? Like, you know, I remember as a newer agent, you go there and you hear a conversation, somebody like a Chris or a John or Kristine or Crystal's having, and you say to yourself, oh, that's how they do that one, right? You hear that dialogue. Sometimes you run into a Kristine, John, Chris, or Crystal, and they say, you know, I see you all the time. I trust that you're a hustler. I have a buyer deal, or maybe you partner with somebody. Opportunity happens when that's why we have offices. So I love that you said that. Kristine, how do you stay focused?
So it's interesting what Crystal said. An agent probably 5-6 years ago, a newer agent asked me if you could give me one piece of advice. And I said exactly what she said. Do the work, show up. And he's like, oh, that seems, I can do that. You know? So yeah, one piece of advice I think I have for newer agents is early on, start being organized, whether it's database, because I know some markets on this call, you know, are very different from one another. If it's a slower time for you, setting everything up and knowing you might not be here yet, but having kind of in the back of your mind, what can I delegate? That's something that I work with my mom. She's been in the business since 1978. I got in the business to kind of help her. And we're each out of 2 different offices. So we work together, but sometimes we don't because we're out of 2 different offices at the same time. But one thing that I think is really important if you're starting brand new and you're not working with someone is having everything set up. I think that goes a very long way, and being prepared. So that way, when you get a call, you're not like, oh my gosh, this is my first buyer, or this is my first listing appointment. I don't know what to do. This is my first open house. Having everything. And that's something that I do on a daily basis, work or not. And people I've worked with have always said this. I always try to be a step ahead. So that's my advice for people. And then also tying into like the delegating, you know, when we as business owners hold on to the work that others can do more economically, so to speak, you end up kind of paying twice as much. So you're doing work that could be done less expensively, and then it's also keeping you from your highest and best use. So knowing that early on, and that's something that I thought, yeah, I could do this. You know, I do the paperwork, I could do this. And it wasn't until maybe a month or two ago, I'm like, you know what, my time, because we're working with a lot of buyers now in a very low inventory market, and you can't be in two places at once.
I love that. Less expensively. What does that mean?
Yeah, so if you kind of look at, and there's ways to calculate your hourly rate, so to speak, and say, okay, these are income generating activities, or for me, client facing tasks. That's really important to me. I want to be the one, if I'm working with a client, that I am the one coordinating everything with that client and personally not giving them to a transaction coordinator, for lack of a better word. That's just how I like doing things. And then looking at all those other tasks and errands and things that can be, whether it's picking up a lockbox or preparing things for an open house. I still like to do my listing appointments and the CMAs, but all that other stuff, the month that I've been doing that, it's been great. So I highly recommend, you know, like Chris said, you know, kind of knowing that early on.
How do you know your time per hour roughly?
So it varies, right? So the number of transactions varies each year, and then you can say, okay, this year I've worked more days. So the short answer is it varies, just because I'm not just working 5 days a week, you know. So some people will do that. Okay, 2,000 hours if you take 2 weeks vacation, calculate it that way if you don't work weekends. But yeah, I have an idea of generally what that is and what the tasks are. That, okay, this, if I'm spending 3 hours in the car and doing this, this can be an errand that, you know, it's better for someone else to do, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, for newer agents, you know, the likelihood of working with a buyer is more likely than having a listing. So if it took you 18 hours to take a stranger, get them in a car, show X amount of properties over, you know, several weekends, and then you factor in phone calls and going to settlement for an hour. I mean, you'll usually find around 18 to 20 hours, and not even being, you know, as efficient as you need to be. And then if the average commission is 2.75 of 500,000, you know, you take $5,500, $6,000, you divide that by that, and you start to figure out what your time is per hour. And then the goal becomes, how do I do a 20-hour transaction in 10 hours? You know, what expectations do I have to set? And it starts full circle, comes back to Crystal. You know, how do we, you know, where do we meet the client first? How do we set expectations? And that's the difference between taking the 20 hours and making it 15 or 16 hours. I'm not, and then you average it out. I mean, there are some clients you have to spend 30 hours with, but on average, you know, you should be able to work a buyer in X amount of time. And your time starts off being $200 an hour, being average at the business. And then the gold standard is you're making the $400 or $500 per hour because you're very well leveraged. That's what, you know, around the corner, if you want to look around the corner and you're building a business, what you want to try and do. So, John, if you were to go back in the past and talk to yourself when you first started the business, and you had to give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
It's actually pretty simple, and that's work. You know, you have to work at this business. It's not going to it just doesn't magically appear or fall in your lap. You know, whatever it is that you decide to do. And for me, it was developing a business plan, the things I was going to do, you know, day in, day out, and make sure that I did those and never let anything get in the way of taking time away from that. I think that, you know, and in the beginning of my career, you know, I'm kind of a technology nut, so I was using, you know, search engine optimization and things like that before people even knew what it was. But I found myself just not buying into everything that everybody tried to sell me. Picking out the few things that I was going to do, the literally, you know, the 5 or 6 things that I was going to do every week. And then every day made sure I did those things. And those things are different for all of us, depending on our personalities, the market that we're in, and frankly, it comes down to some of the things we like to do or don't like to do. So staying true to that task list is really important. I also say, you know, setting yourself as a business. You know, you're the president, you're the CEO, you know, sometimes you're the maintenance guy and you're the chauffeur, right? So you have to set that up in your business. About half of my time with Coldwell Banker, I was a branch manager. And the first thing that I did with every one of my agents, especially when I brought someone new into the company, was sit down with them and outline their business, what they should be doing, how to set up a business. Because, you know, a lot of people, I come from a big business background, big corporate America. And a lot of people that get into this business don't know how to set up and run a business. And since I did that from the very beginning, and now I teach people how to do that, I think that it's so vitally important.
Okay, thank you. Kristine, go back and visit yourself when you first started the business. Really quickly, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
So 2011 in our market was a very unique time. Don't blame the market or use that as an excuse. And
Love
so there's always business, there's always opportunity. At that time, I was living and working out of one of our downtown Chicago offices. The market was very different, and there were some people with kind of sad situations for sellers and things at that time. So seek out to do well, be honest, be transparent. We always treat transactions like they are our own. And I think that makes such a difference, but don't blame the market, because there's always opportunities to help people.
I love that. Chris, go visit yourself 47 years ago when you got into the business.
You know, it's interesting. Everybody is talking about really the same thing. Doesn't matter if you're brand new in the business, been in it 10 years or been in it a long time. Momentum is critical, and it's a lot easier to keep the ball spinning than it is to let it start and try to get it going again. And what everybody is doing is making sure that they're, again, at work, working mentally and physically, and, you know, keeping the ball going.
Love it. Thank you, Chris. Crystal.
I think the big game changer, we waited too long to hire an assistant. We have somebody part-time. I do wish we would have done it sooner. We are most productive customer facing and building those relationships with people, staying connected to past clients and prospects. We do not do the paperwork. We have somebody else do that. We do not do social media posting. I help collaborate with that stuff, but we have a team member, an admin, that does that stuff for us. And I think when we did that, it made communicating with past clients and staying in contact with them more enjoyable, more easy. It freed up our time to do that. And that is where we're best.
Well, I want to say something to the panelists and everybody out there. First of all, thank you for participating today. You all are so well spoken and classy, successful people. And, you know, when I think of Coldwell Banker, you're who I think of. Just people that are contribution based, that come across in a humble type of way, that wants to make a difference. And I thank you for that. So thank you. I also want to let you know that I am scrolling through some of the questions, and I want to figure out, some of the stuff has been answered, but I want to make sure that everybody gets some acknowledgement. So maybe what we'll do is I'll talk to Amy Lerner, maybe we'll figure out a way to kind of shoot some emails out on some of the questions. I think generally, I think we hit, most of the themes here. I love the fact that the panel we put together too, and by the way, this was just luck. You guys all represent a different flavor, but you have a very common approach and philosophy when it comes to how you grow a business. So, and I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. I'm Andy Goodman. I'm the district manager in Austin, but this is not about me, but that's who I am. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity. And we want to do, different types of things. I know that the leadership in Coldwell Banker, we wake up every day trying to think of ways to add more value. And you're going to see more things coming down the pike along these lines. So if you liked it, let us know. And if there's something that you need that you don't have, reach out to us and let us know as well, because we're here, we're servant leaders. We're here to serve you and to do things like this. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your morning, and have a great day.
Thank you.
You're gonna have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.